Welcome to another episode of National Divorce Talk Raw. We're going to cover the latest news covered that just happened. We're going to be talking about how Joe Biden crossed the Rubicon. In studio today is CEO Jason Wright. Jason, tip your hat, if you would. So representing Cali, that's why we're doing black shirts with blue ties. It's kind of Jason's thing. I do whenever he's on the show. We're going to be knocking out a couple episodes of National Divorce Talk Raw today. Number one, arguing with professors who said Cal exit can't happen and proving them wrong. We're also going to point out how even more liberals are talking about secession. And we're going to be talking about how indigenous people supported the Yes California plan to return federal land. But first, for this episode, we're going to talk about all the current news related to secession, national divorce, civil war, etc. And we'll get right to that. But first, check this out. So I'm going to cover the news as I do for you on the show. Jason's going to watch, and then we're going to go to Jason for commentary after we get some of the news clips out. So he's somewhat familiar with this, but not as familiar with all the clips here because he focuses on a lot of the paperwork on the high-level discussions and envoy stuff, and I'm the one in charge of making sure we're getting every last tidbit of news coming out. So here we go. Let's start the show. I'm just going to show you the material, let you conclude for yourself. We'll go from there. I'm sure you'll be terrified as I was. So here we go. First thing. So Joe Biden gave a speech recently about how the MAGA Republicans are a threat to democracy. He literally said, President Joe Biden charged in a primetime address that the extreme ideology of Donald Trump and his adherents threatens the very foundation of our republic. So Donald Trump and his adherents threatens the foundation of our republic. They are a threat to democracy. If you watch the speech, he makes it real clear that Donald Trump and all of his followers are a threat to democracy, and they're just bad. It's not even just another party to not vote for. It's just those guys are bad and they're a threat for democracy. 2 active duty Marines stood behind him, which is unusual because you don't normally see that in that presence for a speech. Some people have interpreted this as Joe Biden saying the federal government doesn't like Trump supporters and it will use the federal military apparatus to go after them. Now, Biden didn't say that. He did give a very scary, stark warning speech focused on a political party saying that they're just bad and evil for America. That's never happened before. Hillary Clinton wasn't technically president, and she said a fourth of the Trump supporters are deplorables. Biden just ramped it up to all of them. So Hillary Clinton wasn't even president, and she said a fourth of my opponent's supporters are deplorables. Biden is president and says the entire opposition party to him is a threat to democracy. Even Hillary Clinton did not go that far. She did not say the Trump supporters were a threat to democracy or an existential threat. They said they were bad people. And she limited it at a fourth of them. Biden said all of them and full threat to democracy. And he had active duty Marines behind him. And the backdrop was blood red. So speeches do not normally have active duty Marines like that. Speeches do not normally call out an entire party as a threat to democracy. Speeches do not have a blood red backdrop. All of that's different and new and scary. And Joe Biden said it's because Donald Trump and his adherents are threats to the foundation of the republic. Basically, they're all bad. They're bad, 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 bad. It's not just another party. They are a threat to democracy. Well, what's interesting here is that asked later, he goes, no, I was not condemning these 74 million Americans who voted for Trump in 2020. But he also said there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. So who knows what the hell the man's talking about? He says he literally gave the speech, and then they asked him, what do you think about Trump supporters? And he goes, I don't think any Trump supporter is a threat to democracy. So he gives a speech saying that, and then the next day he says the total opposite. So I'm not sure, but we do have a sitting president saying the opposition party is an enemy of democracy, an enemy of the state, and it is 74 million people. This is AP News. This is not Fox News. This is not Breitbart. This is standard middle road news. And they're saying, damn, Biden, were you condemning these 74 million Americans who voted for Trump? No, that's not what I meant when I said MAGA Republicans. Whatever, bro. So rightfully, a lot of people have freaked out. I'll get to that in a second here. Let's see. I'll show you one of these. Here you go. I know, Tucker Carlson. No, I don't agree with him. But sometimes when he's trying to say something that's bullshit, he accidentally spews a couple facts. So I'm just going to show you the fact part of his show, not his garbage part that I agreed with. I don't agree with him in general. Take a look.
Time to affect this revolution. It's pretty therapeutic reading all of this. All you have to do is pay close attention to them, listen to what they say, read what they write, and a calm comes over you. They're so dumb, they probably can't hurt.
That is the blood red backdrop with the Marines in dark, which has never been done in U.S. history, period. So just want to point that out. You can see it was a great idea or not, but nobody's ever had a blood red backdrop in dark with the United States military in dark, and then also pointed out at a party and said they're a threat to democracy. That has never happened in U.S. history. Nothing close to that has ever happened in any capacity. So, and even Hillary Clinton, who hates Trump, didn't go a fourth as far as Biden did. So those are all facts. I'm a liberal. I don't like Trump, but these are facts. Okay.
We can't stop ourselves. Here's another example. Finally calling out Republican semi-fascist behavior. Where's this version of Joe Biden been hiding all along? Was his semi-fascism label, in your opinion, unfounded?
Absolutely not.
The Republican Party of today, under Donald Trump, is a semi-fascist party.
President Biden did the right thing. He did the right thing by challenging them and calling them a mega fascist, semi-fascist mentality.
What do you think about the president calling millions of Americans semi-fascist?
Listen, he's got to express and be honest about what he feels in his heart and his soul. And now he's out saying two things. One, lots of y'all are fascists. And, by the way, if you vote Republican, there's a decent chance that our democracy is no longer going to exist. I got to tell you, Scott, a lot of folks who go, where's the lie? I don't see no lies detected. Saying semi-fascist leads me only to the question, what's semi about that? It's full-on fascism.
Plain and simple.
Give it a second. Sorry. We'll get through this. This is what they do to us. So hold on. There you go.
That's the brain trust, ladies and gentlemen. Why are we semi-fascist? We're not full fascist. What's the difference, Joe Scarborough? Talk to us more about criminal behavior. I find it really reassuring. But the point, of course, is that journalism is when you repeat what the people in power say verbatim, and then you congratulate them for their insight. So how does the rest of the world see this? Now, we play these clips all the time, and they're annoying. But if you were taking a cold, calculated look at the people in charge of the United States, if you were a foreign adversary, you're thinking, what are we up against? What would you make of this? Imagine being in the Taliban 2 years ago. You're a Taliban commander, and you happen to flip on MSNBC. And you think to yourself, this is America's news media? Really? I mean, my native language is Urdu, and even I can tell these people are freaking stupid. But their Secretary of State must be impressive, right? He's the Secretary of State. Let's check on YouTube.
Okay, so you get the point. Basically, why I showed you that clip was that, as we've always said, if you have two people in an argument, but they understand where the other person's coming from, like if Jason and I were in an argument about apples and oranges, but I knew you're really about oranges. Now, maybe I don't agree, but I get that you're about oranges. At the same time, you understand I'm about apples. Maybe you don't like apples, but you get that I'm about apples. We could at least have a discussion while we have differences. What's happening is I'm saying I'm about apples and you're about apples too. And you're going, no, I'm about oranges. And I go, no, damn it, you're about apples. And what you're doing is you're saying, I'm about oranges and you're about oranges too, Marcus. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. So do you see how you can have two people opposing each other and yet have an understanding?
You will like oranges.
I like oranges. I need an orange now. So when you have two adults arguing and they at least have an understanding where the other person's coming from, maybe you can get somewhere. But when you have adults arguing and they're seeing arguing right past each other and with no commonality. So I'm not taking a side, but I am saying conservatives are freaking out. Facts. No president has ever called out another party as an enemy of the government. Facts. There's never been a blood red backdrop. Facts. There's never been the military in the backdrop. So maybe Joe Biden was totally right to do it, and it was the right, total, honest, greatest thing to do. But the concept that people would not be scared of that and not have reasons to question is ridiculous. And what we just saw was Fox News covering a lot of liberal news sites going, it was the greatest speech ever. He did nothing wrong. Why didn't he go more hardcore? Why not talk about locking all these people up? And then I just showed you a clip from AP News, which is not Fox News and not MSNBC. And they just go, the president just condemned 74 million Americans. So that's bad. Really, really, really bad when a leader condemns an entire political party. That normally happens right before full-on civil war. The opposition party has noticed the language and is already freaking out. One good thing could have been where liberals said, push that too far. Let's calm it down. Hey, you know what, Republicans? You guys are freaking out too far, but I get that our optics were bad and we shouldn't have done that. What we meant was this. Instead, what we're seeing is liberals go, stupid Republicans, we should have been more hardcore. So that's only going to make it worse. Only going to make it worse. You can't even see or respect how conservatives are concerned by things that are different. And instead, you want to condemn them. So that's going to make them more angry when they feel that there is a real threat and they have reason to feel that. Again, I don't agree with them, but I have two eyeballs and a brain, and I know history. That speech was scary, and it was markedly different from anything in history and way beyond what Hillary did. And some people with rational brains are coming up and going, whoa, whoa, but nobody is. And that's what I mean about, I keep using this phrase. You're going to see me. This is going to be my phrase till we have Cal exit. And it's going to be this. Remember this book? I'm going to keep mentioning that. So watch it. There was this little fat kid who had a gourd, a shell, and he was bringing order to this group of children by acting mature. And then they said, you're dumb and nerdy, and killed him. And then there was no more order, and it was just chaos and cannibalism. And how did that happen? Because it was an island full of children where both sides were children and childlike. And the one person who acted like an adult died. And the moment that happened in the book, you can see it goes chaos quick. And the reason I bring that up is I get that the conservatives were the children for liberals. I get it. But now liberals are acting like children, which means now it's all kids. Guess what happens next? Well, it doesn't stop there. In fact, it gets even worse. Let me show you a little bit of that. Again, we don't want this to happen, but we recognize what's going on even if the rest of the people don't. So here you go.
Wow. And I'll say this. If there's a prosecution of Donald Trump for mishandling classified information after the Clinton debacle, which you presided over and did a hell of a good job, there'll be riots in the streets.
Senator Graham made a lot of waves with his cynical threat there that a Trump indictment would lead to riots in the streets. The comments, in my opinion, were rightly seen as an attempt to bully the Justice Department out of charging Trump after Trump and his legal team failed to come up with a legal argument that would protect him from prosecution over some of the very same crimes that he was so eager to lock Hillary Clinton up over. But it is worth asking the question, is Lindsey Graham right? What will actually happen if Trump is in fact indicted after all?
So I encourage everybody to watch this episode. I like Crystal and I like Sagar. That being said, as I've said with every newscast, they don't always get it right, and sometimes they lie. I remember watching Breaking Points, and they were going, there's no recession, and I knew that was a straight-up lie when it was coming out of their mouths. And then 6 months later, oh, we got it wrong. No, You too can be bought and paid for while saying that you're moderate. Sorry, you're maybe 95% of the moderates, but boy, when you go to the establishment, it is plain as day. So what I find interesting here is Lindsey Graham did make the statement. Civil war is going to happen if you lock up Donald Trump because of the Clinton debacle. And that's why I wanted to show you that. So if you watch that Breaking Points episode, this is why I think this is really bad. Because if you watch the Breaking Points episode, Crystal goes, Lindsey Graham says because of the Clinton debacle that there will be riots in the streets. Well, he was trying to intimidate people, and that's why he said that. And he's really silly and stupid. And then she spends absolutely no time in the 5-minute show covering what the Clinton debacle was or what Lindsey Graham meant by that. She says he's dumb and stupid and exacerbating a problem. And then she completely evades covering what he meant by Clinton debacle. So let me show you the show again. For me, that's not a coincidence. I don't view that as a random chance coincidence. Oh, they just accidentally forgot to talk about how Lindsey Graham was wrong saying this when he said because of the Clinton debacle. It's a 6-minute show, and at no point in the show can Crystal mention what the Clinton debacle was or why Republicans are upset about that. I bring that up to point out that in all of the reporting that I've read, and look, I don't like Trump, okay? I think he did it. I think he's a bad person. I think he's a racist, but I got 2 eyeballs. All of the reporting about Trump at Mar-a-Lago, none of it brings up the Clinton debacle. None of it brings up that James Comey, the Federal Bureau of Investigation director, said on TV that she acted recklessly and against recommendations and probably got people hurt and probably lost secrets. But because they believed that she did it unintentionally. Why? Because she told them that they didn't believe to prosecute. I'm not making that up. That's in his speech. He goes, we just didn't feel that she had the intent to do this, so we're giving her a total pass, and it's cool. And why do we believe that she didn't have the intent? Well, she told us she didn't have the intent, and we believed her with our investigation. And then in that same speech, Comey literally, and I remember because I remember thinking that's the dumbest thing you could have said when I saw it. And again, I hate Trump. But Comey goes, just because Hillary Clinton got off with this, nobody else should assume that in similar circumstances, they would not be prosecuted. The FBI director said, just because we're letting this person off, don't assume that a person in, quote, similar circumstances would also be let off. No one covers that. No one mentions that speech. No one mentions that comparison. Nobody talks about, they just go, look at these stupid Republicans in their Clinton comparison. So when I see the establishment and when I see Breaking Points, which is where I go to for moderate things, and they can't even do it, it tells me something. The system does not want you to hear about the James Comey speech and how bad it was with Hillary Clinton. And that's why, and if I'm wrong, call me out. Like if you're going, no, here's reporting of Trump and Mar-a-Lago from the AP or MSNBC or CNN or San Francisco Chronicle or LA Times, and they included a full paragraph about what happened to Hillary Clinton, what the FBI said, what they didn't say, and how it was egregious. Show me. I can't find that anywhere. And I'm really good at this. So what that tells me is the system is not bringing up Hillary. And what that tells me is the system's not bringing up Hillary because they know it's too damn close to what's happening with Trump. And what that also tells me is that Lindsey Graham was not trying to intimidate people. He was trying to save lives. He was saying, because of the Clinton debacle, if you do this, it will be riots. And they said, look at this guy. He's trying to intimidate the justice system. By the way, let's not cover what the Clinton debacle is, and let's not cover what he means. Let's just say that it's stupid and wrong. If I'm wrong, find the coverage. This is what I do. I cover the news coverage. They don't cover it. So I see the system not mentioning this and going after Trump, which makes me think they know it's too damn close to what Clinton did. They know it's horrible. They don't want to mention that, and because they're going to go through with it, which tells me children running the federal government. Those idiots aren't going to really revolt after we basically let their opposition leader get off on the same thing. They're stupid. And then conservatives going, you just let the other person off for the same thing in our mind. Now, maybe that's right. Maybe that's not. But this goes back to another episode that I did on National Divorce where I said Merrick Garland came out to answer questions about this because people were talking about civil war. And the thing to do would be to tamp it down. And he and Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. Everything was done perfect with the raid. I'll get to other questions later. Okay, so people are talking about civil war and killing each other and ripping the country apart because of a raid that you two authorized. And people are coming to you scared and terrified. And your response is, we did everything perfect. I did nothing wrong. You can't get me. And I'll get to any questions about civil war in a few days when I feel like it. Does that sound like somebody who's worried about the fallout of the country or 74 million people breaking off or polarization of the country? I remember a time when you had people like George W. Bush and Nancy Pelosi would come out on TV and would both be saying the same message as a Republican and Democrat, which is calm down, we're going to defeat these terrorists that attacked us on 9/11. So George Bush and Nancy still argued heavily, but even then they'd come out on the same page like, we're all Americans, we got to fight these terrorists, calm down, it's going to be okay, because they understood people were scared and they needed to see that. Now people are equally scared and their attitude is, I'll get to it when I feel like it later on. And they're not sharing the same message. So that is a bad sign of the dissolution and breakup of America. Again, I'm not encouraging it, but I'm tired of people accusing me of encouraging it. I'm showing you facts. This is happening without us being involved at all in real time. So Joe Biden makes a horrible speech. Lindsey Graham says riots in the streets. Nobody on the left can call out Biden for horrible optics. Nobody on the left can acknowledge that there's something to the fear that the conservatives feel about the James Comey decision. Again, I don't agree with them, but to act like they're totally crazy and there's nothing to it it's just going to exacerbate the problem and make them even more angry and more likely to explode. And that's all you're doing by not acknowledging it. So basic classic human psychology. I feel sick. You're saying I feel sick. No, you don't. You look fine.
Oh, gee, thanks. All of a sudden, I feel better.
Yeah. Go ahead and tell me you're hungry. Say you're hungry.
I'm hungry.
No, you're not. You're fine.
Oh, okay. I guess I don't need to eat then.
So when you do that to humans, they get mad. That's a basic human psychology thing. When I have a problem and you dismiss it, I get really mad. Basic psychology 101. Well, now it's happening on a national scale. So all bad signs. All bad. Okay, let's go with even more. Let's see, covered that. Ah, yes, here we go. So right around the time of Joe Biden's speech, here you go. This article comes out. The Disunited States by Stephen Simpson and Jonathan Stevenson. It's time to consider a radical solution to stave off the prospect of political violence and even civil war in the United States. It's time to consider a radical solution to stave off the prospect of political violence and even civil war. And he's talking about disuniting the states. Well, that's exactly what we said. So here's a liberal publication talking about fellow liberals who finally came to the same conclusion that we did. The book is coming out soon. The article's out this month. You'll see a lot of articles with this breakup map here, and they're just talking about how it's disunited. So we have said you want to have political divorce to prevent political violence. Here is the New York Times, not a conservative magazine, not a Trump lover, saying basically the same thing in a review of this book. I want to show you this. Oh, yeah. So, okay. So now that's there. Here's Lawrence Tribe. Lawrence Tribe is a very, very famous lawyer and expert. He's routinely referred to on liberal media for understandings of the law. Many Americans, conservative as well as liberal, would like to see a defederalization as tantamount to an admission that the U.S. can no longer boast of an enlightened and ideologically cohesive citizenry and is no longer a large and powerful unitary democracy. Well, we're not. No one in the world thinks that we're an enlightened and ideologically cohesive citizenry. Not since Trump. So sorry, Lawrence, you're about 6 years too late. Also, all the BLM things, which, hey, maybe they were peaceful, but people saw cities burned down over political cause at the same time that they saw the rise of Trump. So nobody's buying that. A large and powerful unitary democracy. Well, no one really buys that either because they saw Trump elected. The European Union criticized America for banning Trump from Twitter, removing a sitting president from being able to talk to their people. They were not in line with America and as they treated them. So no, bro, no one sees that. Nobody's seen that for years. Who are you talking to? Because it's nobody in Europe or Japan or South Korea or anybody who studies democracy around the planet. So, but here's Lawrence Tribe, a famous liberal, also talking about this article, Disunited States. And then here's another article with the same picture, talking about the same book. America splitting into state by state into two blocks. This is from The Economist. The Economist is a international policy magazine, not left, not right, international policy, and high level policy. And what they're saying is these policies reflect America's growing ideological polarization. State policies vary more than ever they have before, says Chris Warshaw of George Washington University, co-author of a forthcoming book, Dynamic Democracy. As states go in different directions on social and economic policy, the consequences will be deeply felt by all Americans, regardless of their place on the political spectrum, with implications around the world. To quantify the divergence amongst states, Mr. Warshaw and Devin Kauke of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology analyzed 190 policies from the 1930s to 2021, almost 90 years on the whole, and said states have become more liberal. However, they have also unwound racial restrictions, bans on women serving in jury, and laws criminalizing, etc. So here's what they're showing is basically, if you go back to the 1930s in this chart, you can see states kind of diverge from each other, but not as much. Now we can go to the year 2021 and you can see this bottom line versus the top line. So there's a line here between 2 and 3, and then there's a line here between 0 and 1. So look at those two blue lines in the year 2021. They're 3 times as spread apart as the two blue lines in 1931. So 1931, look at the two blue lines. Now comparison to 2021, look at the two blue lines. See how they're 3 times more split? That means our understanding between liberal and conservative is 3 times larger. And this comes from a hard study looking at policies from 1930s. And they are saying states are diverging more than ever in all of American history, which means more polarization and that it's going that way. And I'll also point out these trend line curves are roughly steady. You can see around 2010 where the curves split a little bit more. So they're kind of a similar trend till maybe about 1990. Then around 1990, you can see the top blue line and the bottom blue line start to split. Around 2010, there's an even more substantial split and it grows from there. So what that tells me is that for the last 11 years, or 2 or 3 presidential administrations, things have been getting worse and more divergent. Well, that doesn't end there. Here's a little map that's kind of interesting. So more liberal, more conservative policies. See how they're kind of close? We just travel forward in time. And now there's California way at the top with New York, Maryland, Vermont, Hawaii, Connecticut, and then at the bottom is Alabama and Mississippi, Arkansas, Wyoming. See how they're completely opposite from each other on the graph? Now let's go back in time. Well, look, California's pretty close to Alabama and Mississippi around 1996. So California kind of close to Mississippi, Alabama around 1996. Okay, so let's go back to this chart. In the 1990s, the top blue and bottom blue were largely convergent. Around 2000, you start to see a market split between the top blue and bottom blue. Let's go back to the chart. Here's the 1990s. Look at California and Mississippi. Let's go to 2010. Ooh, we're starting to get some real elongated trends. Look at that. Wyoming and Oklahoma are way off the charts compared to Hawaii and Vermont. And California.
Ohio, dead center.
Yeah, Ohio, dead center. And then we fast forward, California way out there compared to Oklahoma and Arkansas, 2020 even worse. So there you go. Things are getting worse. States are diverging even more. That's just going on. And people are talking about how you're having this split and cohesion. At the New York Times Review of Books, which is the top level discussion in domestically. And then The Economist is talking about it, which is a top level foreign discussion. So high level discussions about America splitting apart and the divergence of preferences amongst the states. And that is not a lie. And that comes on top of Joe Biden basically terrifying the feces out of Republicans and liberals not being able to recognize how that's scary. But we're not done. It's even more. So, here we go. Let me clap some of these. I want to keep that one. Okay.
Here, a quote from MSNBC's Tiffany Cross. The full context is, she said, some people would say that a civil war is coming. I would say that a civil war is here. In response to Joe Biden's speech last night, Democrat media activists are saying that this was a pre-war speech akin to what was said before the first Civil War and before World War II. As Joe Biden came out and denounced all of Trump's supporters as a threat to this country, as the White House has done so several times, people on Twitter on the left are gleefully cheering for what is possibly one of the darkest, most dangerous, and divisive speeches that we've ever heard come from a president.
So I can't find the clip, but there was one of, it was on Fox News, and it was NBC or ABC or CBS. And they were going, what do you think of the speech? And they were talking to a Biden person. And the Biden person goes, well, I think it was a unifying speech that brought all Americans together. And the ABC reporter literally put up their hand and goes, whoa, that was not a unifying speech. So that was not Fox News. That was not Breitbart. That was not Bloomberg. That was a CBS, NBC, ABC reporter talking to a Biden person. And they're going, what do you think of the speech? Oh, it was a unifying message for the, whoa, no, it was not, buddy. Like, maybe we're on your team, but come on. So I'm trying to find that clip. I can't find it, but that absolutely happened. And here's MSNBC saying, yeah, it's like a Civil War speech. And then here's Tim Pool. Maybe he's a liberal, maybe he's a conservative. A lot of conservatives watch him, and they're freaking out again. So more proof of that.
Yeah, and you know, I totally agree that the Civil War 2.0 actually already started. It was, the tipping point was when they raided Trump's compound. They've been doing little half measures and go pick out some little fish from the pond from the January 6th thing, but being very careful to avoid tramping on Trump, so to speak, if that makes sense. And then they went and did it. And that's kind of like, you know, the first shot fired, or so to speak.
Yeah.
They're, you know, we've talked about it before, the Fugitive Slave Act, Kansas being the frontier and the new bastion of where will slavery go. Either this, you know, this one is going to tip the scales. Either it's a yes or a no. And so people on the yes side and people on the no side went over there and started shooting each other, trying to take it over to influence it to their means, because everything was split pretty 50-50. Hey, James.
Totally agree with you, James.
So that was the Bleeding Kansas, right? And that was the whole January 6th insurrection commission finding out, we're going to take that shaman guy and we're going to give him the exact food that he demands, or so help us, he'll have to eat something. Wow. Way to put your foot down. And then, he got a legal slap on the wrist and probation. Oh. Anyone who's not white out there will know just how much BS that is. Anyone non-white who goes and storms a federal building where violence is occurring in that whole action, there is violence and threatening of elected officials. Several very serious federal laws were broken with that, and they have not really, they haven't taken the full legal measure that they probably should, let alone could. And it said to me that, they really didn't want to push things too far towards civil war, because Donald Trump's voting base, and I don't like him either. The one thing that I agree with Hillary Clinton on is that there are a good chunk of people who support that man who are absolutely despicable human beings. But I know people who voted for him who are not despicable human beings. They voted for him because he was what the Republican Party put up, and they're Republican, and they voted Republican. It's a party loyalty thing, and hey, that's your choice. I thought we were in America. We get freedom to choose and choose our own vote, right? Well, I'm not going to sit and tell people, how they have to vote, and, oh, you voted for that guy, so your vote was a bad vote, or a waste of a vote, or the wrong vote. Vote with how you feel, with what you choose. That's what it's supposed to be for. That's the only thing I'll ever tell anyone about their vote. That, and that if you can vote and actively choose not to, then you are actively choosing not to participate and have your voice out there, and you're actively not seeking representation by not voting if you have that ability. Because again, here in the United States of America, they like to take that right or ability or whatever you might want to think it is, because it doesn't really seem like it's a right if they can just take it away. But they love to take it away, especially demographically, like non-white people. Do we want them to vote? The United States is had a colored past, for lack of a worse way to put it.
They have found are better.
Oh, keep talking. I'm gonna give James wanted this info.
Okay. Yeah. Americans United for Peaceful Separation. A point in time where we've got a president using the military as a pawn, a symbol, right? I mean, I know plenty of military personnel, and what they're serving for is 99 times out of 100. What they're serving for is so that those who can't don't have to, and so that everything can keep working and that, you know, no one's going to come and destroy us because we have people that will protect us. That's what they're there for, not to be used as puppets and pawns and a backdrop, a talking point. Want to use veterans as a talking point? How many veterans commit suicide every year because of things like PTSD, depression, you know, shell shock type PTSD, which is like the worst end of it?
Yeah.
How many veterans are homeless? How many veterans have serious health problems? And how many of those with serious health problems are actually being adequately cared for?
Question.
If you want to talk about veterans, if you want to use veterans for a speech, maybe consider something like that and not something like, hey, half of the country is the enemy and I've got my buddies here backing me up. Because, yeah, that screams, I want civil war. I want half of this entire country's population to face off against the other half and hopefully kill them all. And, you know, California's got roughly 11 or 12% of all of America's total population. So that's going to be a lot of Californians fighting Californians as well. That's going to mean California blood being shed over a dumb president and his dumb opposition. They're both dumb. Like you like to say, they're kids, they're children, and they're not. They're old men acting like little children.
I'm saying everybody's acting like kids now.
Isn't it time we just, I mean, how much more do we need to see of this? Folks, really? How much more?
Look at that. Yeah. That's why we do the show, because nobody puts together all the news and make sure you're informed, and then also puts it together in a context so you can see how things are going. And again, we're not celebrating this, but I find this to be the only news show that's documenting how we're continually moving to dissolution, completely independent of the acts of Yes California. I mean, this is, you know, Lindsey Graham said the thing. I didn't make him say that. I didn't make Joe Biden make that speech, but, you know, Lindsey Graham saying riots in the streets right after Joe Biden giving a speech about 74 million Americans are enemies of the state. I mean, that's just bad piled on top of bad. Gasoline, and then you put kerosene on top of that. What do you think is going to happen?
You can't forget that over the last several months, we've actually seen the reasonable left side actually calling for violence, calling for an end to peaceful protests, storming state and federal buildings.
Yeah.
In multiple states, riots. Like,
I don't get you.
It's not that Republicans are just a bunch of wingnuts. It's that most of America right now is a bunch of wingnuts. California, do we really want to be stuck in the middle of all of that?
It's going to get worse. And you had, what was it? You had everybody criticized how the judge that gave the Mar-a-Lago indictment or search thing was threatened, and liberals were jumping up and down about how this is so horrible that this federal judge was threatened because he gave an indictment or the search order for Trump, and that was all over the liberal press. What they didn't cover in the liberal press at all was how 1 month before, a man tried to kill a Supreme Court judge. That's an even bigger federal judge, and they said nothing at all. So you have liberals trying to kill federal judges, and liberals won't condemn it. And then you have conservatives trying to kill federal judges, and liberals will condemn that. And so what that shows is there really is no logic to it all. It's my side wins, your side sucks.
I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah, and
I'm smart, you're dumb.
Yeah. And the reason I know that's true is for the same reason that we're not seeing it covered. So none of the coverage about how the judge who gave permission for the search order for the Mar-a-Lago raid being threatened by people. None of the articles talking about that also talks about how a guy almost killed Kavanaugh, a Supreme Court judge, and President Biden and no one on the White House could condemn the protests in front of it. And the Supreme Court security office had to beg state and local officials to enforce laws already on the books. And so again, when I see, hey, we're covering our issue. Well, can you mention this other issue that's sort of similar? No, we're not going to cover that at all. So federal judge gets attacked by conservative. End of story. Well, what about when a bigger federal judge got attacked by a liberal? No, we're not covering that. Trump stole national security secrets, and he's complaining about Hillary Clinton do the same thing. Look how stupid he is. Are you going to cover why he said that about Hillary and anything in detail about the Hillary case? No. We already covered. We said it's stupid. So when I see the media do that, what that tells me is they know, and they don't have a good argument, so they're just not going to cover it. So we're not going to cover how liberals were totally cool with the Supreme Court judge getting murdered because it was Roe v. Wade. And we're not going to cover how the Hillary Clinton thing is way too close to the Trump thing. And maybe she deserved to get off. And maybe he deserved to go to prison. But it's going to be some nuanced legal argument that a couple professors of Harvard Law get. And the rest of us are going, I guess. And that will lead to bad things.
Well, I think I just figured it out. It's the magical double standard that applies only to Democrats in the United States of America. You see, Trump builds a wall, and his followers want, him to build a wall. So he's like, hey, I'll build that wall. Well, Trump's a racist for that, and his followers are deplorable, bad people for that. And then when Biden gets into office, what was that, Biden? Oh, you're going to finish Trump's wall. Oh, but because it's a Democrat doing it, it's no longer a racist thing. And the people behind him that are supporting this are not deplorable, bad people. There's definitely nothing in there at all to see whatsoever. Definitely not like some company getting a big contract to go and finish that wall. Who owns the company? Who are they tied to? Who owns stocks in those companies? I'd like to know.
Well, that's any last minute comments. We're going to do another show on liberals supporting Cal Exit. We'll come back in about 2 minutes with that show. We'll see you soon.